Africa Briefing podcast, where we unpack the stories shaping the continent. My name is John Ofeyansa. Today, we take a hard, unflinching look at Nigeria's latest political scandal, one that strikes at the heart of power, gender, and justice. Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan has been suspended from Nigeria's Senate for 6 months. Why? Because the strikingly beautiful senator accused the Senate President Akpabio of sexual harassment. But this isn't just about Natasha. It's about a system that punishes women for daring to confront the abuse of power. And if you think this is just another political squabble, think again. This is a crisis of democracy. This is a crisis of justice. Let's talk facts. Mrs. Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, and I dwell on the Mrs. to indicate her marital status. She made the allegations public on February 28. She submitted a formal petition calling for action. But instead of launching an independent investigation, Nigeria's Senate dismissed her claims on so-called, and I quote, procedural grounds. And then, swiftly, coldly, the Senate Ethics Committee recommended she be suspended. 6 months. For what? For bringing the Senate into disrepute, they said. But we have to ask, who is really dragging Nigeria's Senate through the mud here? The woman who raised a red flag on alleged abuse, or the men shielding one of their own from scrutiny? And this isn't happening in isolation. Across Africa, women in politics face systemic harassment, intimidation, and violence. The Global Corruption Watchdog, Transparency International's 2023 Breaking the Silence report on sextortion, calls it for what it is: corruption. Sextortion is described as the abuse of power to sexually exploit or coerce women, often under the guise of official duties. And it's rampant. The report found that women in governance and public service roles frequently experience sexual harassment as a form of gatekeeping, as a weapon to block their participation. The same barriers Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan is confronting are part of a much bigger global problem. And in Nigeria, this scandal shows just how deep the road goes. Those voices you hear, they are not just chanting for Akpabio to step down. They are demanding a fundamental shift in the way women are treated in Nigeria's political space. Because this isn't just about Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan's suspension. It's about the fight for women's full and equal participation in governance. It's about dismantling the power structures that normalize harassment and silence those who speak up. Nigeria ranks among the lowest in Africa for women's political representation. Just 33.9% of lawmakers in the National Assembly are women. And when one of them has the courage to speak out against the system, she's thrown out of the chamber. This is not democracy. This is dictatorship, wrapped in parliamentary robes. So, where do we go from here? The Senate says Natasha brought the institution into disrepute. But the only thing this suspension has done is expose the Senate's rotten core to the world. They could have done the right thing. They could have called for an independent, transparent inquiry. They could have demonstrated accountability, but instead, they demonstrated fear. Fear of the truth. Fear of what happens when women refuse to be quiet. And who is Gospel Akpabio? He is a veteran of Nigeria's rough political terrain, a man who's built power and influence through alliances and controversies, a man who presides over a Senate now accused of enabling a cover-up. Let's not forget, this is the same Akpabio who joked on live television about ministerial nominees paying, in quotes, holiday allowances for Senate approval. And now, when accused of something far more serious, sexual harassment, the Senate closes ranks around him. What message does this send to the women of Nigeria? That they are disposable, that their voices don't matter, that the price of speaking up is political exile. Transparency International calls sextortion the most significant gendered form of corruption. And they are right. Because it doesn't just rob women of their dignity, it robs societies of progress. When half of the population is excluded or forced into silence, the entire nation suffers. Nigeria cannot claim to be a democracy while its institutions are weaponized to protect predators and silence survivors. So, what needs to happen now? First, there must be an independent investigation into Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan's allegations, not by the Senate, not by Akpabio's allies, but by an independent panel with the credibility to get to the truth. Second, Nigeria must urgently reform the way it handles sexual harassment claims in public office. Third, women's participation in governance must be protected, not punished. And finally, civil society, activists, and the media must not back down. This fight isn't just for Natasha. It's for every woman who has been shut out of power, who has been harassed, who has been told to be quiet. No more silence. The suspension of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan has pulled back the curtain on Nigeria's political theater. And what we've seen isn't pretty, but there is hope. Hope in the protesters outside the National Assembly. Hope in the voices refusing to be silenced. Hope that this moment can be the spark that ignites real change. For women in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. For justice, for democracy. This has been the Africa Briefing Podcast. If this episode resonates with you, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'm John Ofeansa. Until next time, stay informed, stay critical, stay engaged, and keep hope alive. Goodbye.